Coming into your YouTube airwaves, it's Vaughn, the Stat Man, and welcome to the Stat Room. All right, guys, so the start of the 2022 Fanduel NFL season is upon us, guys. They're in training camp now, guys. So I'm going to go over my 5 top players that I like in this upcoming NFL season. And the way I do my fantasy, guys, I don't use every quarterback. I pick 7 quarterbacks that I like, and I run one of those 7 every week. I just have 7, so that way I don't worry about, because it's too much to be going through 31 quarterbacks, sometimes 34, 35 if someone gets hurt. So these are my 5, guys. So what you see on the screen is their stats from 2021. And let's start with Tua Tagovailoa. Now, Tua Tagovailoa is my 5th favorite quarterback that I will use in fantasy. Now, last year, he had a 67.8 completion percentage. He threw for 2,655 yards. The man threw 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He had Waddle, who was one of the best rookie wide receivers last year. He had over 1,000 yards. Gesicki is one of the top, I would say, 7 tight ends in the league. Now you add Tyreek Hill, who can blow the top off the defense just like Waddle. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, I saw him in person, guys. I went down to Miami and watched him carve up my Baltimore Ravens last year. So I'm very, very confident in what he can do this year. Only thing they were missing were running backs, so all they did was brought in Sony Michel, Mozart from the 49ers, and Chase Edmonds. So expect Tua Tagovailoa to win a lot of fantasy contests, and he's ranked number 5 on my list. And the number 4 quarterback on my fantasy NFL Fanduel list is none other than Kirk Cousins. Laugh all you want, guys, but Kirk Cousins won me a lot of money last year, and they finally got rid of Mike Zimmer, who was holding his franchise back. He was not an offensive-minded coach. Bring in the new guy, and you're going to see Kirk Cousins. He's going to ball out. So he's number 4 on my list, guys. And last year, he didn't do much, guys. All he did was have a 66.5 completion percentage. He only threw for 4,221 yards. Then the man only threw for 33 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. And he had a 103 QB passer rating. Guys, he's 7th all-time in passer rating. And Kirk Cousins is a winner. But what was missing was the offense just wasn't clicking. Mike Zimmer was holding them back. And Kirk Cousins this year, he's going to be a top 5 fantasy QB. And that's why he's my 4th in my QB rankings. And number 3 on my list is Russell Wilson. Yes, guys, Russell Wilson is 3rd on my list, guys. The Seattle Seahawks wasted so many of Russell Wilson's prime years from giving him such a poor offensive line. So now he moves him and his beautiful wife, Sierra, over to the Denver Broncos. Now, John Elway doesn't really draft quarterbacks all that well, but he is a master. I ain't gonna say master, but he's just a smart man where he say, you know what? Let me just bring in a veteran that can take me to glory. Just like he brought in Peyton Manning, now he brings in Russell Wilson, who is coming off of a 64.8 completion percentage season. He threw for 3,103 yards and 13 yards, 3,113 yards, while running for his life day in and day out. But this is why I like Russell Wilson to be the best quarterback in this division. He had 25 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. Now he has an offensive line where he can sit back and just pick defenses apart. And he's going to have running lanes, guys, because he has Jerry Jeudy on one side, Sutton on the other, and these amazing running backs. So when those wide receivers are getting into their routes, I believe both of the safeties are going to have to be deep when they think it's obvious pass, and he's going to have rush lanes. Now, last year, he only rushed for 183 yards and had 2 rushing touchdowns. But I can imagine what he's going to do this year. The play action is going to be amazing. He's going to have a lot of those play actions where they fake it to the left, and he's going to keep the ball and run around the right side and score a touchdown. Watch, he has 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns, and that's why Russell Wilson is 3rd in my fantasy QB rankings. And number 2 on my list, guys, is Jalen Hurts. This guy was the number 1 fantasy QB last year, guys. In my personal opinion, I thought that he was a guy that most people didn't play. His price tag never got high. And now this year, guys, he bring back Smith, one of his amazing wide receivers. Saunders is someone they need to get the ball in his hands more, but Gainwell is the man. Catching that ball out of the backfield, he'll probably end up taking over the number one running back position at some point. And they bring in a dynamic A.J. Brown, and they already had Goodart at tight end. Guys, he will be number 2 on my fantasy list, guys. Look at his numbers from last year. The 61.3 completion percentage. That will go up, bringing in A.J. Brown and throwing the ball more to underneath to Gainwell. So I expect his completion percentage to get up to about 66%. He threw for 3,144 yards. I think that's going to go up to about 38 to 4,000. He threw 16 touchdowns to only 9 interceptions. I think his 16 touchdowns will be around 22 to 23 this year. And he had an 87.2 QB rating. Now, this is where he separates himself from most other quarterbacks. He had 784 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns. I believe this year he gets 1,000 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns because with all of these weapons, the rushing lanes for him, just like Russell Wilson, will be wide open. So Jalen Hurts is someone you can run with confidence, and he is number 2 on my quarterback rankings list. What does it take to be number 1? That's right, guys. Lamar Jackson will come in on my list as the number 1 fantasy QB for the 2022 NFL season. Do you guys forget the week before Lamar Jackson was injured, the Ravens was 8-3 and number 1 in the AFC? The Bengals wasn't even in the playoffs. And he did this with his number 1, number 2, and number 3 running back on IR. His number 1 and number 2 cornerbacks on IR. One of his best defensive ends on IR. His starting left tackle, all-pro tackle Stanley on IR. The best blocking tight end in the entire NFL, Nick Boyle, on IR. And he still was the quarterback who led the Ravens to being first in the AFC. Then he got hurt, and the Ravens didn't win another game. So that man is worth $350 million guaranteed, in my personal opinion. So let me get into his stats from last year. Remember, he did this with 4 games less than everybody else on his list. He had a 64.4 completion percentage. And he threw for 2,888 yards. Didn't play in 4 games, guys. He had 16 touchdown passes to 13 interceptions. It was his worst season throwing the interceptions. But he rushed for 767 yards. Didn't even play in the last 4 games. He had 2 rushing TDs. This year, he will rush 4,000. Bateman will be a top 10 wide receiver this year in the NFL. Mark Andrews is already top 3. And Dobbins will be top, I would say, 10 running back. And Lamar Jackson will show you what it takes to be number 1. So that's my list, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at VonneStatMan. And guys, don't forget to win. That means give people what they want so you can get what you want. And guys, don't forget to think in ink. That means write it down so that way it can come true. And good hunting on your 2022 NFL Fanduel season. Love you guys.